as John just mentioned, my name's Jeff Hiatt. So I have a fan club back there. This is my daughter and son-in-law. They're looking to possibly get into this kind of work, buying properties and fixing them up and selling them or flipping them or whatever. So I thought they could come and hear about this. So a quick funny story. I've been doing this cost seg thing for 22, almost 23 years now. That means my daughter has been riding around in the car with me for 22, 23 years, listening to me talk on the phone about depreciation, and she's never seen this presentation before, so this will be funny for her to see. Anyway, I'll go ahead and, the bottom line with this, kind of the bottom line up front is, if you can accelerate depreciation now and take a deduction today, that's better for you from a tax perspective because it reduces your income tax now, and that allows you to free up cash, allowing you to go either buy another building or improve your current building. It's basically an interest-free loan from the government. So I'm going to go ahead and zip along here. Blah, 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 Jeff Hiatt, so that's my email address. So our firm, we've been doing this since '96 was when we started it. I joined the firm in '99. We've done about 20,000, probably we're at this point 21 or 22,000 cost segregation studies. Our firm has 6 CPAs and 17 engineers who do the work. We have about 250 years of cost seg experience on the team, and we work with typically CPA firms are the ones that bring us to the dance. We also do some other things that are tax related and engineering, where taxes and engineering kind of intersect. So we do cost segregation studies, 179D studies, which are energy efficiency studies. 45L is for apartment units where there's a $2,000 credit per unit if you make the building more energy efficient. De minimis studies, again, I'm going to keep it on cost seg here. So ultimately what this is going to do is, it may not work for everybody, it may not work for you, but in general, this is the overall concept. And most of our clients say cash is king, so you want to pay attention to that. What cost segregation studies are, is the IRS approved methodology to accelerate depreciation. In other words, we're taking assets that you've bought in a building and we're moving them out of either 27.5-year life, which is the straight line depreciation that the IRS would automatically put you into. So whatever you pay for the building, you're going to have to write it off over 27.5 years. That's for a multifamily. Any other building out there, any other building, is going to be 39-year depreciation. The only exception is apartments, and that's 27.5. The reason that a lot of people haven't done them or don't do them is because, number one, they don't understand them. Their accountant hasn't brought it up because their accountant doesn't understand them. You need to have this done by qualified professionals, and qualified professionals are, by the IRS standard, engineers, architects, or cost estimators, and that's the folks that we employ. We're going to go with I hang out with CPAs, so they write this as a CPA would write it. So a taxpayer purchases. So in other words, a real estate owner has bought a 4-unit, single structure, multifamily for 400 grand. We've already subbed out land. So they probably pay 500 grand, we'll say, because you have to sub out land. Land is non-depreciable. Okay, so this is the theoretical unit. Okay, so here's a 2021 acquisition. They have 400 grand as your depreciable basis here. If they did nothing, their first year depreciation deduction would be $7,800 right down here. So 400 grand in 27.5-year life would give them a $7,800 deduction first year under straight line. And then it would go up to $14,000, but first year it's $7,800. We come in, do a cost seg, we find out that we can move 48K or 12% into 5-year life, and 9% or 36K into 15-year life. And you say, so what? Well, that means they're going to end up, instead of $7,800 of depreciation, they're going to get $70,000 of depreciation first year. That means they've picked up
big chunk of depreciation there. Their first year tax deferral, 72,000. Excuse me, 32,000. So they deferred taxes, 32 grand right there. So that's for a 2020 acquisition, 2021. Next sample is real estate owner purchases a multifamily residential for 1.2 mil net of land in 2016. Now this is where you can step back in time and grab depreciation that you could have taken in years past, but you haven't taken yet. So here we've got the 2016 acquisition, 1.2 mil. So far, they've taken 198K. So that's where they are without cost seg. So I'm going to call that the before snapshot. We come in, do our reallocation, and you end up with 144,000 into 5-year life and 108 grand into 15-year life. So instead of 198,000, they could have taken 332. They're picking up 134 grand of depreciation. First year tax deferral, 56K. Okay, and just to point out, because some people get nervous about this and they say, oh my gosh, if I take all this depreciation early, if I save all this money now, I'm not going to have depreciation later. That's kind of a concern. And for a CPA who isn't familiar with this concept, that's what they're going to say. They're going to say, oh my goodness, John, what are you doing? You're going to take all this depreciation now, you're not going to have anything later. But let's look at that. We're accelerating here 21%. That's all we're moving. 21%. In other words, you still will have 79% of your depreciation going forward. Your depreciation before we were involved was 43K. You're still going to have 40K as your depreciation deduction then. You've just front-end loaded it. You're not giving up that much when you do this because it's only 21% that we're talking about. Okay, so now we're getting into a bigger asset. Again, taxpayer. CPA's killing. Purchases a multifamily residential for 18 mil net of land. And so the numbers become real big here. So 18 mil with straight line depreciation, they would have had 354K. We reallocate here. Again, it's only 22%. They get 4.2 million of depreciation. They've picked up the improvement by cost seg was 3.8 mil. First year tax deferral, 1.5 mil.
Jeff, is this our building?
No.
That's pretty close.
Yeah.
That's pretty close.
No.
Pretty close.
So everybody asked me, why can't we just make more of it 5 and 7 year? Well, because the IRS says for a building to be a building, you have to have certain things in it. You have to have roof, walls, windows, doors, electrical for lighting, plumbing for a bathroom. Beyond that, it's not 39 or 27 and a half year life items. But everybody just heard what I said and they went, oh my gosh, that's everything in the building. There's nothing left. So we've got a quick little jazzy photo picture here. So interior plumbing for bathrooms, roofs, siding, foundations, exterior doors and windows, and ceramic tile and HVAC are the items that are 39 or 27 and a half year. The items that are from the physical structure, from the edge of the building to the property line, are going to get 15-year treatment. And they're very well defined. So I think we have jazzy little pictures here. So trees, landscaping, and irrigation systems, planting beds, shrubs, retaining walls, drainage ditches, retention ponds, fences, site lighting, grid striping, and pavement symbols. So you can claim faster write-off on the grid striping on your parking lots. Site lighting, paving, I think I mentioned. Now the inside of the building, you're going to have other stuff. So specialty plumbing, so like kitchens. The plumbing for the bathrooms, 27 and a half year life. In the kitchen, the plumbing is 5 year. Carpet, removable flooring, decorative lighting, trim cabinetry. Where's my little pictures? Here they are. So window treatments, decorative trim. So you see that has trim down there. Wood panels, carpeting and removable flooring, specialty electric. So the IRS says you need to have one source of light. Okay, well I'm looking in this room and there's probably 4 or 5 sources of light. Only one of them has to be called primary lighting. Everything else is decorative, everything else is 5-year. So the place to think of this are buildings that are under construction now, buildings that are undergoing renovation. So you may have owned a building for years and you're renovating it now. I talked to a client today and he's had the building, good sized building in Salem, Mass. He bought the original building in '83, and I said, well, it doesn't really help you because it's so long ago. And he goes, well, we spent $1.5 million 3 years ago. And I said, now you're talking, because he renovated the building. So if you've bought existing properties, you can do this. Any building that has been bought, built, or improved since '87, which was when the last big tax law changed, since '87, you can do this service. Now, technically, you can go back to '87, but typically you won't, because going back that far doesn't really help you. It doesn't give you the time value of money. The idea here is that you're going to grab this money and be able to do something with it better than send it down to DC. With an old property like a property bought in '83 or whatever, bottom line is you've already let the government have the money for so long, it's not going to help you accelerate anything there. But if you've renovated, it will work. So the real window of opportunity are buildings that you've bought, built, or improved in the last 10 years, 10 or 12. Inherited buildings. You folks might know people that you're thinking of that have owned a structure or a building for generations. It's been in the family, it's passed down from generation 1 to generation 2, and you're thinking, oh, I'm all set, there's nothing to do there with a cost seg. But that's actually not correct, because typically when generation 1 passes on, in the tax code there's a thing called a 754 step up. So it went from generation 1, now it passes to generation 2, the depreciation clock resets, and now you can redepreciate. So typically, again, what an accountant's going to do, typically, is just throw it down as a new 39 or 27.5-year asset. The whole number goes into that category, and that's where it is. You can do a cost seg on that inherited building. The reason that it's beneficial is that it does increase depreciation in the earlier years, which reduces taxes, giving you more cash flow, which allows you to either go buy other buildings or improve your current buildings without having to go to the bank. There can be permanent savings depending on the cap gain rate and the ordinary deductions. We're taking out the deductions here under this depreciation deduction under ordinary tax rates, and when you bring it back with recapture, you end up possibly having some more of it in the cap gain rate. Also, if you're doing a 1031, and probably you folks know a little bit about 1031, if you're doing 1031, the whole recapture conversation goes away. So you don't have to worry about it then, and people just do these cost seg on the relinquished property and then on the acquired property. And also, and this is especially for, I was talking to somebody out there, young couple out there, about whether to do a cost seg when you first buy it, or do you wait until the renovation is done. If you have the details that we provide in a documented format that the IRS approves, you can take write-offs on the stuff that you end up replacing. For instance, let's say John closes on a property in the next month or two. It's paying rent, he's got it in service for 2021, and next year he starts to do the renovation, and he puts a new roof on, 27.5, he puts in new HVAC, puts in new windows. These are all 27.5-year items. Well, if John doesn't know what those were valued at, and he's replaced them, that new money that he's just spent to improve the property goes on the depreciation schedule, and now he's got 2 roofs, 2 HVAC systems, and 2 sets of windows. The one that came with the building, and the new one he just put in. What you can do is look in the report and go, oh, wait a minute, I can take a write-off on the old roof, the part that I haven't yet depreciated. I can take a write-off on the old windows. I can take a write-off on the old HVAC. So you get to reuse the report on a go-forward basis. And so that doubles or triples or quadruples the value of the report. We provide not only the detail on the 5 and 7 year and 15 year, but also the 27.5-year items.
So even if it's in the trash, after I junk it, I can still depreciate it.
No, you take the full thing.
Correct. A slight distinction. is you would take it as an abandonment loss as opposed to depreciate it. So depreciating it would mean you would be stretching it out over time, which you really don't want to do if the IRS doesn't make you do that. So what you would want to do is take an immediate loss on it. So it's like getting a big deduction versus having to write it off over 27 and a half years.
Only to the degree it wasn't depreciated. So,
Correct.
All right, so whatever you would have had over the remaining 27 and a half, the second you replace it, the old one, it's all immediately depreciable or an abandoned loss.
Yeah.
Okay.
What kind of documentation do you need, like for the IRS?
The reports that they do.
So we create the reports that the IRS requires. What we need from the buyer, the taxpayer, is that we need typically your HUD closing statement, your settlement statement. If you've got the offering memorandum or any kind of details about the property, typically the properties, probably for the folks, everybody here, you're going to be dealing with like a listing sheet, which is going to tell us square footage, number of units, and an appraisal. So if we had some basic detail like that, what we do, because we've got a database of 21,000 of these studies, for John or for anybody here, we would create an estimate of tax benefit before you spend a nickel. So you would know going in, hey, this is what my tax benefit's looking like. This is what it's going to cost me to get. Do I want to do it? Usually, people consider it a win if they get 4 or 5 to 1. So if you give me $1 to do the report and I give you $4 or $5 in tax benefit, typically you'll say, hey, let's go. That's better than Foxwoods. So, look, so that's what we do. We'll tell you up front. Now, we usually hit that 5 to 1 ratio at maybe 300 to 400K. So if you spent 3 to 400K on a building or improvements or both together, however you get there, it will probably make sense. When you get well north of that, like 3 million, 5 million, 18 million, you get a lot more than 5 to 1. 5 to 1's the kind of the starting point, if that makes sense. Oh, by the way, because some folks out there will probably be thinking, oh my gosh, I don't want to amend my tax return, that's going to be ugly. You don't have to amend your tax return. The IRS allows you to step back in time, again, technically back to 87, but we probably won't go back that far, but you don't have to amend your tax return. You use what they call, and we prepare them for the client, a 3115. 3115 is a change in accounting method, and what it does is allow you to step back in time without amending to grab all of the previously missed depreciation in the current year. That's an important feature that we offer because we have 6 CPAs and 17 engineers who do the work. And that said, if there's an error on a 3115, it does trigger an audit. So we don't let our clients make an error on that. We create the 3115s. We do them for all of our clients. And if there was bonus depreciation, so there's this whole thing of bonus depreciation came along right after 9/11 in 01. They decided to incentivize development, and they gave 30%, depending on when it was, up to 100%. But since 9/11 of 01, if you've done any kind of construction projects, you can claim bonus depreciation, which allows you to move the 5 and 7 and 15-year items. So you would be thinking logically, if I get to take a write-off over 5 years, you would divide whatever the number is by 5. And if it was 7 years, by 7, and whatever it is by 15. Well, under bonus depreciation, they allow you to take a big chunk right away. So they don't make you wait 5 or 7 or 15 years. So that most recently was under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, where they said if you buy a building or construct a building, you can claim anything that has a short depreciable life, you can claim it all in 1 year, the first year you buy it. Okay, so we offer an analysis of your situation free of charge. These are the items we need. Basically the address, number of units, number of tenants, placed in service date, and depreciation schedule if you've got it. So here's probably what will happen. A number of you will go, yeah, I paid 800 grand for a building or 300 grand or whatever the number is. But what you've forgotten is, because in your mind, because I'm a real estate investor myself, you think, what did I pay for that parcel? Well, that includes the land and the building. And the IRS doesn't let you write off the land. So your accountant or somebody along the way carved off some number for land, even though you're thinking you paid 500 grand. In fact, 100 grand was attributed to land, which is non-depreciable, meaning your depreciable basis is 400 grand. So if we can get your real depreciation schedule, that's going to enable us to do a better, more accurate estimate for you. Okay, so that's why we're asking for the depreciation schedule. I don't want your tax return. I don't care about your tax return. We just need the depreciation schedule. Yes?
And that can come from the tax assessment of the property?
No, no, the depreciation schedule is typically going to come off of your tax, from your accountant. It may be buried in one of the pages of your tax return, but what you're talking about, the municipality, that's going to give land building ratio typically when you buy it.
Yes, that's.
Okay, and that, in and of itself, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what you've claimed. Oh, and also you might say, okay, I paid 500 grand, but 100 was for land, 400, okay. And then you're gonna say, well, we spent 300 grand fixing it up. Okay, great, you spent 300 grand fixing it up. But you know what, your accountant allowed you to write off a whole bunch of it. So the only thing that shows up on your depreciation schedule might be 100 grand. So now your depreciable basis is 400 for the building, plus you spent 300, but he wrote off a bunch of it for you. So you end up with 100,000 of improvements. So those are just, that's why we like to see the depreciation schedule, because you're gonna remember the total number and you're not gonna know how it was treated from a tax situation. So here's my stuff. If you guys are interested, get a hold of John or Matt. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Can I get an autograph?
Of course. Yes?
This assessment, it's done once for the property and then used year after year. You don't have it, like, once you do your assessment, that's kind of set in stone for the next 27 years or whatever.
Yep. And unless you were to do improvements,
Then
you
you
know,
reassess.
then like we would evaluate it for you. Like if you called me up and said, so we did a cost save for you, and then next year you call me up and you go, hey Ben, I spent 100 grand on roof and HVAC. Well, that's great, but those are 27.5-year items. You don't need me to put a value on that. I could look at the report for you and go, okay, that means you've written off 2 years of the original roof and 2 years of the original HVAC. So those were 27.5-year items. You have 25 years of depreciation left on each of those assets, roof and HVAC. You get to take the write-off on them. So it depends on what you're spending the money on. So I would talk to you and I would say, okay, so what are you spending the money on? And you're going to go, oh, we're putting in granite countertops and kitchens and wiring and putting in new disposals and all the other stuff. So bottom line is we would talk and figure out whether it's even a benefit to you to do a cost seg on the improvements that you do, if that makes sense.
The receipt will message it.
Okay. Any other questions?